Welcome to the Doctor's Debrief podcast presented by NDMD Productions and made possible by Get Up Productions. Learn more at the link in the description. I'm your host, Vivien McCool, a first-year medical student. You can find my YouTube channel in the description below. If you're familiar with the NDMD YouTube channel, you'll know that we love sharing stories from students, residents, and attendings of different medical professions while giving you an inside look into their lives, not just healthcare workers, but as incredible people as well. Here in the Doctor's Debrief podcast, we're going to take a dive into some of the most impactful patient cases of a physician's career, the ones that are forever imprinted in their memories and have played a crucial part in shaping their identity as a physician. Although all of us have experience with facing and overcoming adversity, we seldom talk about the skills we use and the lessons we learn along the way. On Doctor's Debrief, I'm passionate about being transparent about these hardships and the methods we use to overcome them to encourage others to follow their dreams and learn from each step of the journey, regardless of their circumstance. And with that, please help me welcome today's guest. Today's guest is the Chief Resident of Neurological Surgery at the University of Miami Miller School of Medicine. He graduated from the University of Texas at Austin with honors and a degree in biomedical engineering. He received his medical degree from the University of Texas Health Science Center in San Antonio, where he was elected to the Alpha Omega Alpha Honor Medical Society. He is a member of the American Association of Neurological Surgeons and the Congress of Neurological Surgeons. Dr. Luther's current clinical interests include skull-based surgery and complex vascular surgery. His current research interests include developing new medical imaging and treatment modalities with an emphasis in biophotonics. I don't know how he has free time, but when he does, he enjoys going to the beach, playing with his dogs, and serves as a mentor for men in all walks of life. So welcome the one and the only Dr. Evan Luther. Dr. Luther, thank you so much for agreeing to join me today. I am so excited for our interview.
Thanks.
Okay, so before we get into the thick of it, is there anything that I missed or that might be of interest to bright students watching or listening right now?
I don't think so. That sounds about right. I mean, that pretty much sums it up. So.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. Sweet. Yeah. So I met Evan when I was living in Miami, like right before I started applying to med school, and he helped me so much through that process. Like, I don't think I could have made it into med school without your help. From editing my personal statement to hooking me up with a photographer for my fancy application pictures, I don't think I could have done it without your guidance, and I'm eternally grateful.
I'm glad I could help. Really, my pleasure.
So you taught me the importance of mentorship throughout this process, into and just throughout medicine. What impact do you think mentorship had on your journey through medicine?
Man, that's impossible to do it without good mentors. I mean, I think it's impossible to go on this journey without having someone who's done it before you. I mean, that's kind of the whole process. And even if you think of like what residency is, right? I mean, when it was first developed, the residents were residents of the hospital. They lived in the hospital and they trained under the people who had done it before them and didn't graduate until that person said that they were ready to graduate, right? It wasn't a fixed, length of time. It was just based on their mentor's evaluation of their skill. So I think in general, I mean, I definitely couldn't be where I am today without good mentorship. I think I've always had somebody, in my life who's kind of lent a helping hand and kind of guided me in the right direction. Whether that's in my personal life or life in general or my profession, I think, there's always good to have somebody who's been through something before you and can kind of guide you and show you the pitfalls to avoid, if that makes sense.
No, I couldn't agree more. I think it might be the case with other med students or pre-meds as well, but I think we do well in school, so we think we can like do it all. And it wasn't until I started reaching out for help that I realized you can't. Like, you need it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I definitely, I think going into medicine, you kind of don't really know what you're getting yourself into. Like, when you say you want to go to medical school, like, you don't really know what that actually looks like. I mean, people can tell you all these things like, oh, it's like, trying to drink water through a fire hose, or all, whatever,
Yeah.
the anecdotes that people use. But um, until you're in it and you're actually doing it, you don't ever realize, what it's like. And I think medical school was that way, residency was that way for sure. So, I can only imagine, as, being an attending neurosurgeon, that it's going to be the same thing, that you really you can't understand it until you're there and doing it. So.
Yeah. So true. So true. So, what brought you to medicine and why neurosurgery?
That's a good question. So medicine. So my parents are physicians. My dad was a neurologist, and my mom is an doctor of internal medicine. So I was kind of around medicine my whole life. If that makes sense. But my route there was a little bit more circuitous, I guess. I I went to college just because I thought that was like the thing to do after you graduate high school. And wasn't
Yeah.
I wasn't I thought that probably I would pursue medicine just because that's what my parents were doing. And then I started doing biomedical engineering in college with like a focus on device development. Um, and I got really, really interested in that. Kind of really felt that that was where my life was going to head. So I actually thought my path was to be like an MD PhD. So I was going to do it. I was going to go to MD. I was going to apply to MD PhD schools, or programs only. And my thought was that, like, I was going to be mostly a physician scientist, and not really practice medicine, and then and focus mostly on translational research. That was kind of my goal. And then I didn't get into any MD PhD programs, and then barely got into medical school. So once I started medical school and I realized, one, how much work it is, that I not didn't want to necessarily spend 8 years in school, because that's, how long MD PhD programs take. And then
Yeah.
two, I kind of realized that I didn't have to have a PhD to do translational research. And then once I was in medical school, I also realized that I really enjoyed taking care of patients, and interacting with people. I had worked in a research lab in engineering in undergrad, and most of it was just sitting at a computer, writing code for hours every day, and realized that I did not like that. I actually enjoyed having some interaction with people. So then I kind of changed gears. So then once I was in medical school, I realized that I probably wasn't going to do an MD PhD, because I felt like that was too long of schooling, and that I could still engage in research if I wanted to with an MD alone. And then kind of wanted to translate my engineering experience of, like, building and developing things and problem solving into my career. And so then that kind of led me towards more of a surgical specialty, because I feel like, surgeries there's a lot of problem solving, working with your hands, but using your logic and thought processes and your understanding of anatomy to do, the right thing for the patient. And so that kind of geared me towards this, a procedural or surgical subspecialty. And then I tried a bunch of different things. I thought, maybe urology or GI, but neurosurgery was like the most most intense, but also most rewarding surgical specialty that I got to be a part of in medical school. And so I realized very, like, quickly that was what was going to keep me engaged for the rest of my life. That was something that I could do for forever, and still find joy in it every day going to work. And so I think for me, that's, at least in medical school, the question I had to ask myself when you're thinking, like, what do you want to go into, right? Because there's always this pressure and talk about it, and I feel like from day one, everyone's got this, like, idea that they want to do X, Y, and Z. But my personal thought is that, like, you just got to ask yourself, like, can I do this every day? Can I wake up at 5 in the morning every day for the rest of my life and do this, right? And if the answer is no, then you should look at something else, right? You should do something different, because I think I personally believe that a lot of physician burnout comes from being unhappy about what you do, uh, and it's hard to be unhappy when you think you have the coolest job on the planet. So, I feel like for me, that's where I am. I think that I have the coolest job on the planet. I get to do amazing things every day, and as a result, all the minutia and the things that come along with every job that are unfun and no one wants to deal with, those things kind of are easily looked over for all the amazing stuff I get to do. So
Nice. Yeah, and your OR is lit.
something
I've
like that.
shadowed you before, and you guys have fun in there.
Try to keep it entertaining.
There you go.
Yeah.
So no regrets on the specialty. Do you ever
No,
consider? Like, do you ever think like, maybe I shouldn't have?
no, I don't actually. I mean, to be honest with you, I look back and I think to myself, if I didn't do neurosurgery, I probably wouldn't do medicine. Meaning, like, I
That's
probably
awesome.
I probably would use my engineering background and be like a consultant for a company or something. I just doesn't, there's nothing else in medicine that really interests me. And to be quite honest with you, when I see like now in residency, see the other subspecialties and the people in the hospital, it just further confirms to me like that I'm doing the right thing. Not because listen, everybody, I firmly believe that like everybody should feel like what they do every day is the coolest job on the planet, right? If you have that feeling, then like you're in the right place. So I just know, like, when I see like other doctors in the hospital, other things they do, and I'm like, I just couldn't do that. I just do not want to do that. It doesn't interest me. So
Yeah.
yeah.
So as cool as neurosurgery is, the people who visit you are like in some of the most painful and like dire moments of their lives, searching for hope, answers, healing, and just relief. I know it'll be hard to pick just one, but if you could, what would you say is the single most impactful patient experience that you've had thus far?
And that's tough. Yeah, I mean, when I talk to patients, I tell them like no one wants to be seeing a neurosurgeon, right?
No one.
Like there's like in there is no one on the planet that's like today's got a great day because I gotta go see a neurosurgeon, right?
Yeah. No.
And I tell them, when we do these surgeries, right, that for them it's a life altering event, right? For us, it's what we do every day, right? So
So true.
that's that every patient is it's a life altering experience for them, right? Because there's no such thing as a routine brain surgery, right? Yeah, yeah. So yeah, that's what I tell people when I talk to them and try to walk them through it. It's so hard to like. I know we talked about this before, like most impactful patient experience. I mean, there's there's just like one that sticks out to me, and I don't know why this is, but mainly because it like everything was so like it was just took like such a like hard experience of like the family, and made it so like worthwhile. So I don't. This was years ago. This was like 4 years ago when I was in our pediatric rotation, and there was this young kid who had like he had craniocervical abnormalities. So he basically had to have a big fusion of his head to his spine, and he was in a halo, so which is, I don't know if you know what that is, but it's like a fixation device that attaches on your torso and then has actual pins that are like on your head to keep his head from moving so that he would fuse over time. But he was like 4 years old, 5 years old,
And he like
so
walked around like
he
that?
walked around with that with the halo on for
Oh,
like several months after the surgery. But reason why is that for for whatever reason, these you get kind of attached to these families. You see them in clinic, and then you operate on their loved one. You see them in clinic, and so um, they're for whatever reason, the mother like had my WhatsApp and like would just send me messages and like updates about him.
hmm.
And I think it was also because I at one point like I was on call and one of the pins had come out, so I like had to drive all the way to the hospital at like 9 p.m. to like put this pin back in her son's head. And of course he's, furious because I'm like, putting this thing into his skull while he's awake. And um, she sent me this like picture of him for Halloween with the halo on, and he had dressed up as Frankenstein. So like she had him like in like this big like black suit, and he was like painted all green, but the bolts on his head were like the Frankenstein bolts, the things from the halo.
Yeah.
So I don't know why. I mean, it was, it just sticks out to me as this like experience where, not only like the young child who is, having this, obviously serious problem, but that like him and his mother and his family could, still celebrate and like and incorporate the bad stuff that was going on with them into like fun and like make it part of like life and who he is. So I don't know, for whatever reason that like always sticks out to me as like, wow, like that's like a patient experience, or the patient having an experience where they take something that is, could be detrimental, right? I mean, you can imagine many people would just be furious all day, and that they have to be in this device, 24/7, and they like made it fun, and could see the light even in the dark, if that makes sense.
Yeah. No, I
Yeah.
think that's awesome. I feel like there's so many lessons to get from that. Like,
Yeah, that one always sticks out. I don't know why. I mean, when you ask me that, I mean, there's so many different patient experiences, but I just feel like that's like the one that sticks out to me the most about like just finding joy in even the dark places.
so did he turn out okay?
Yeah, it turned out
Once it came
fine. I
out?
mean, they ended up obviously getting the halo off later on, but yeah, turned out great. So
That's awesome.
yeah.
That is awesome. So how do you think like this experience shaped you as a physician?
Yeah, I mean, so I definitely think that in neurosurgery, a lot of what we do is dealing with very, very ill patients. I mean, people can be very sick, right? I mean, if they have cancer, or they have, a ruptured aneurysm, or things that are just, that really put them, at serious risk of, permanent injury to their brain, or even death, right? We deal with that kind of almost every day. So it's hard to see the good in that sometimes, right? I mean, a lot of what we do as neurosurgeons is try to just keep everything at bay. Does that make sense? I mean, if someone has a malignant brain tumor, we take it out, right? But then they have to get chemotherapy and radiation, and it's usually a death sentence to them, right? Meaning that even if we remove all of the tumor, it almost always comes back.
Wow.
So our role is to try to keep things at bay, right? Rather than really, doing something that truly, saves someone, if that makes sense, right? I mean, sometimes we do, sometimes we do, but a lot of it is dark stuff. So I think, in my mind, seeing that and knowing like, wow, there's this young child who has a serious problem, and yet the family and him can be so positive about it, helped me like understand that even though, the stuff that we deal with every day can be dark, that
Mhm.
there is positive from it, that we do, there is an overall net positive, right? And I think that's important to understand,
Yeah, the silver lining.
and hard to see sometimes. I mean, it's hard to see when
Yeah.
you have a lot of patients who are doing poorly. It's very hard to like see the positive in that. So it's helpful to be reminded of those things.
Yeah. And I feel like it's so easy to like to just dwell in like the sadness of it all.
Yeah, yeah. And I think, what I will say is that there are times also that, as residents, it's harder because we don't always get exposed to like the follow-up of patients, if that makes sense. Meaning that we do see some patients in our clinic, our, resident run clinic, but like our attendings, sometimes they're personal patients. They, we don't see them till, potentially even ever, right after they leave the hospital. So because our attendings see them in clinic. So I remember,
Oh.
doing like a follow-up angiogram on this lady who had had a ruptured aneurysm, like probably a year and a half prior.
Uh-huh.
And I remember seeing her. I remember seeing the name like on the schedule for the day, and I was like,
Uh-huh.
I recognize that name. And then I looked her up, and I was like, oh my God, she's like alive, like because in my mind, she was so sick for so
Yeah.
long in the hospital, and neurologically at the time of her ruptured aneurysm was like devastated. I mean, very like almost doing nothing but having brainstem reflexes basically, right, which are your most basic reflexes, right, and like every resident at our program had like taken care of her at some point, right? They all knew her, and so I went to go see her, and she was like sitting in the bed, like awake, talking, like smiling, interacting with me, and
Whoa.
you're like, wow, like sometimes these people do well, so
Wow.
it was those moments that I like cherish, where you think to yourself like, there is so much dark in what we do, but again, there is this ability to really truly impact what these people's lives, right? That here's this lady who everyone thought was on death's door a year and a half ago, and now is like you know interacts with her family, is like
Mhm.
there, I mean, it's like you're like, wow, okay, maybe what we do does help people, right? And so I
Yeah,
think
a
those
little bit.
moments really allow you to kind of stay positive, even when you're surrounded by a lot of bad things.
That is
And
amazing.
yeah, it's pretty cool.
Were you gonna say something?
Oh, I was just I don't know. I was thinking about that those little, like, those precious moments help you realize that, like, that what we do is important and is impactful.
Absolutely. I honestly thought that like a ruptured, isn't that super rare to survive, or am I wrong? Like I thought a ruptured aneurysm is like pretty much a death sentence.
Yeah, I mean, so I think in general, the most people say that if you have a ruptured aneurysm, it's a 50% mortality rate. So
Wow.
what that usually means, though, is that the majority of those people don't even make it to a hospital, right?
Yeah, like
So
50% like
like,
before
I
they
think in
even get
general
somewhere.
you probably have a 50% mortality rate, but of those people who, the majority of that 50% are people who don't even make it to a hospital, meaning that they have a ruptured aneurysm and they die before they ever get to a hospital.
Hmm.
Of those people in the hospital, I think the mortality rate is much lower than that, meaning that the people who have a ruptured aneurysm but make it into the hospital, the mortality rates are lower than that, but it comes with significant morbidity, meaning that there's significant risk of having stroke, or permanent neurologic deficits as a result of the ruptured aneurysm. So
Okay. Okay. So it sounds like this, like that experience kind of taught you like to look at the silver lining. Like,
definitely. I mean, you got to find it everywhere. I mean, just like you said, we enjoy our experiences in the OR, right? So we like to listen to music, and I always try to be lighthearted about everything. I mean, we have what we deal with are serious diseases, but that doesn't mean that we have to be serious all the time, right? I think
yeah.
that's also part of it, is that learning that if you can enjoy what you do, which I love what I do, then it means that we can all enjoy it, right?
Yeah. I think that's important too. Like you're bringing your best self to the OR. Like you're not going to go in there like all doom and gloom every day.
Exactly, exactly, exactly.
That's awesome. Okay, so thank you for sharing your experience with us.
Yeah,
Is
of
there anything
course.
else you want to like throw in before I wrap it up?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I would say, let's say, I mean, I guess the majority of the listeners are what, pre-med and medical students.
I would say so, yeah.
Probably. Okay, good. Yeah. I mean, so if you're if you're thinking that you want to go to medical school, I would ask yourself, is there anything else I can do that would make me happy? Right? And I don't say that like to be rude or mean. I say that because medicine requires sacrifice of probably the majority of your young adult life,
Mm.
right? So meaning that, in your mid 20s, when people are, going out or getting married, or, whatever, you're studying for your next shelf exam in medical school, right?
Mm.
And furthermore, if you go to medical school and then you go to residency, by the time you graduate, like for me, I'm 32 this year, and and this is, I'm finally graduating residency, right? So I've been in school since I was 16, school after high school since I was 16 years old. So the last 16 years I've been in school or training, right?
You graduated high school when you were 16?
I did, yeah, yeah,
Sheesh.
yeah. But the reason I tell you that is that it requires tremendous sacrifice.
Mhm.
And that's hard to understand going into it, right? That's hard to know what that truly means when you're going into it. And if you think to yourself, there's nothing else that I would rather do, then you should do it full steam head on, and do it, and put all your effort into it, because it if that's truly how you feel, then it won't ever feel like work.
Med school is work.
Med school is work. Med school is work. But for me, it was a goal, right? It was a means to an end, right? I mean, to be honest with you, I did not like medical school, and the reason I tell you that is because I did not like the idea of having to cram for these, like to just ingest this incredible amount of material, and this idea, and everyone feels like they're competing with each other constantly. It's this very odd environment,
Yeah.
to be quite honest. It's an environment where that kind of breeds this weird, sense of isolation, right? That like, my class rank is higher than your class rank, or less than, and blah, blah, blah. So then I'm not good enough, or whatever, or I'm not doing enough of X, Y, and Z. It really breeds this like sense of isolation that I
Mhm.
hate, because that's not what medicine is about, you know?
Really? Like, do you think it actually ends, or do you think you just get so used to it that like you
It ends. Residency is much different. Residency is much different. Um, at least in neurosurgery, we're so small. It's such a small group. I mean,
Mhm.
we have like 21 residents in total, right? In our entire residency, it's a 7-year program. We have 21 residents, 3 a year.
Yeah,
Some like our anesthesia program here has like 30 residents a year or something crazy like that.
per class.
Yeah, yeah. Our
Because you guys
medicine,
take
I think
like
our
two,
medicine,
right?
yeah, we have 3 a year. Our medicine, I
3 a
think our
year.
medicine
Okay.
residency has like 20 or 30 per class.
It's
But
insane.
so you can imagine, right? Like, I don't know, for us it's very close knit, and we're much more like a family, and I think it's much more of understanding of one another, and I definitely have enjoyed residency way more than I liked medical school, to be honest with you. But I
Cool.
think the reason I say that is that, even when I was in medical school, I could still find some enjoyment in it, because I knew it was like a means to an end, right? Like,
Yeah.
does that make sense? But I definitely, yeah, it was not an easy environment, and I don't
Mhm.
think it is for anyone, because the way medical education is set up currently, it breeds isolation, I think, and it
Yeah,
really,
it's slightly toxic,
yeah,
I would say.
yeah. I mean, I get it that I don't know if there's a better way, but it definitely did not feel like fun to me.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
So speaking of residency, what are some ways to stand out for applications?
Oh man, it's so tough these days. I mean, I feel like I probably wouldn't even gotten into neurosurgery residency if I had applied these days, because everyone is like so
Nah,
much, people just keep getting better and better. Or
you're a
like
star.
the applicants that we interview are just like are like ridiculous. I mean, it's incredible that these
Dude,
people
your
have.
bio that I read is ridiculous. I'm intimidated. How?
Yeah, but I don't. Anyways, it's hard. I mean, I would say, it's even more difficult now to stand out, because I think medical curriculums are moving towards pass fail, right?
Yeah.
The USMLE examinations are now going towards pass fail, right? So the step
Mhm.
one is pass fail, and so how do you, as a program director for a residency program, how do you distinguish, right? I mean,
Mhm.
if everyone has all passes and everyone passed USMLE step one, then you're the same person, right? How do they filter applications, right? And you think like they have to do it some way, because like our residency gets 400 applications a year for 40 interview spots for 3 actual spots, right? So you have to filter from, you have to pick out 10% of the applicant pool, right? Already. So how do you distinguish that 10% from the other 90% if they're all passed all of their classes and they have all, passed USMLE, right?
Mm-hmm.
How? And so it's, it's tough. I mean, I think especially in neurosurgery, there's a large focus on research, and I think research is important no matter what specialty you go into, but there's definitely a large focus in neurosurgery on research, and I think research can definitely set you apart. Makes
Mm-hmm.
makes you makes it very clear to residency program directors that that you, one, are able to have a task, complete it, right, and demonstrate that you have understanding of what you did. And two, it shows that you have interest in their specialty, right? I mean, more so than just I'm applying to that specialty, but that you have vested interest in it, meaning you've spent time outside of your normal curriculum thinking about, ways that we can improve that specialty, because that's really what research is, right? I mean, if
Mm-hmm.
you're doing research in any given field, it's the idea is to try to improve it, right? To make it better, to change what we do. So that's one, definitely research. I guess now everyone is like trying to take step 2 as well, right? I mean, I don't know. Here,
Wait, you didn't used to have to do that
no,
before?
we did. I meant at the same time. Like
Okay.
our medical students here now are like, they're studying for like 8 weeks, and they're taking like step 1 and step 2 like back to back, like almost at the same time.
Yeah, that's kind of, some people are doing that. And now what they're doing is people will take step 1 year after they matriculated. So like I'm probably going to try to shoot for November or
Yeah.
December instead of
Yeah.
doing back to back so that you
So
can.
space it out a little bit. Yeah. I mean, I would say, that step 2 now is going to become, a big deal, meaning that they're going to use step
Yeah.
2 scores as a way to, distinguish people, from
Is
one
step two
another.
harder? How does that go?
I don't know. I honestly, I thought it was easier. I thought step
Okay,
2 was
cool.
easier. I mean, it was less like basic science questions and much more like clinical questions.
Okay.
Um, but I think step 2 is also what's going to distinguish people now, because
Mhm.
that's what they have. And then unfortunately, there's been this kind of push to distinguish people purely based on the medical school that they go to, right? Which is
No.
which is hard, right? Yeah, I mean, it's
Yeah.
it's not it's tough,
Mhm.
because in their mind, right, when they think to themselves, if Evan Luther, who is from, this UT state school in Texas, who has passed all of his classes and passed step 1, compared to someone from whatever, Harvard, right, who has also passed all their classes and passed step 1, in their mind, Harvard, is a better applicant, right? And
Mhm.
in some respect, that's true, right? That person placed themselves in a position. They worked hard enough to get to a place to where they could be at a top tier medical school, right?
Mhm.
But that doesn't explain like the background, right? Like that doesn't explain that I didn't like, that I applied to MD PhD programs and didn't realize that my MD application would be viewed separately. So like by the time all these MD programs were looking at it, it was like January of the application year, right? That doesn't explain that. And then like I shouldn't have to explain that, right? It doesn't
No.
matter, right? But that's what happened, right? So it's a tough place. It's a tough place to be in,
Yeah.
But I think it's definitely what's happening, and then there's been this other shift into like getting other advanced degrees. Like some medical schools now like let you have like an elective year where you like are supposed to get like do actual basic science research, or like get an MBA or things like that.
Yeah, like MPH is a huge one.
Not sure that helps that much in neurosurgery, to be quite honest with you.
Mhm.
Um, I just don't think that's as people don't see that as much of a way to set someone apart, if that makes sense.
Right.
Um, it's tough though. I think that's really it. And then I think the other side of that is that doing away rotations as well. We have to do away rotations in neurosurgery. It's like a requirement. And then kind of having the letters of recommendation from that also help set people apart. But to be honest with you, most of those letters are uh, to weed out the people who are abnormal, if that makes sense. Meaning that letters of recommendation are very similar, meaning that they're for most people, unless they're on the opposite ends of the bell curve, right? Does that make sense?
Okay.
If they're truly exceptional, then someone will say something like, "This person is truly exceptional and really, really, it would be an amazing resident." Or they'll
Hmm.
say something on the other end, which is that they weren't that good, right? But the
Okay.
majority of people fall into that category where all the letters kind of read the same. So that
Okay.
doesn't, that's also a little less helpful. So I don't know. It's tough, but I definitely think research and step two are going to be the things that set people apart now.
How do you have any like do you play a part of that? Have you ever like helped with the
Oh yeah,
application
yeah,
filling out?
definitely.
What are
Yeah,
the like on average, what do you think how many papers are your is your program accepting? Like
you mean like
that makes sense.
you mean in terms of like publications?
Yeah,
What do
like
you
what's the average applicant?
like for people that we interview? The average is probably like 10 to 20, something like that.
Wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
That's
that's
cool.
probably average, I guess.
Cool.
Yeah. But that brings it back to mentorship, right? What I would say is that, like, if you're, for people who are, if you're a medical student who is very interested in a certain subspecialty, you should find attendings, residents early, like very early, who are at your medical school, who are interested in things, and latch onto them and just do as much work for them as you can in terms of research. Like, just learn how to do statistics, learn how to write scientifically, right? And it's painful. No one wants to do it, but I'll tell you what. Like, having 7 years of residency, there are way more people that have reached out to me. I've given them a project and they've done nothing, than there have been people who have actually followed through with the research.
Really?
uh, yeah, because it's difficult. It's not easy, and it requires a different set of skills than people are used to. And if you add that on top of them having to do, learning the classwork and stuff like that in medical school, they just don't want to do it, or they don't feel motivated enough to do it.
Yeah. No, it's a lot to balance.
It's a lot, and I get it. But if you're really interested in something, then you got to find time and be proactive about it, right? Meaning that, like, no one's gonna reach out to you and be like, "Hey, you want to help me?" Right? Like, you gotta
No.
you gotta reach out and do it. But once you're there, I've found that, honestly, like, once you start once you start asking, to help, like, "Hey, I can do X, Y, and Z. I'd love to work on this project or do these things." Then it just keeps falling, right? Like, for myself personally, like, I know that,
Mhm.
like, if I have a medical student who is very good and, like, can take a project and, like, run with it, I'm way more inclined to just give them more stuff, right? Because
Right.
I know that they're good and I know that they can do it, right?
Reliable.
Versus, exactly, they're reliable, and they actually have an understanding of not only how to conduct the research, but also, you know, what it means in relation to neurosurgery, right?
Hmm.
And if they have a good understanding of that, that means that they can do the statistics, they can write the paper, and for me, I almost have to do nothing except give them the material, right? And so for that,
Yeah.
I'd much rather, in my mind, create that, right? Where this person becomes the star, and all I had to do was just give them the information, right? I just had to hand them, "Hey, this is an interesting topic. Here it is," right? And then they can return to me with almost a completed project, and it's much easier for me to just keep giving them more and more ideas, right?
Yeah.
And for me, that's kind of what mentorship is about, right? Is that finding those people who are motivated, right? Who have done enough to put themselves in a position to be successful, and then continuing to, like, kindle that success, right? Feed the fire.
Feed the fire. Oh, I love that mentorship.
Yeah.
People don't talk about it enough.
No, it's huge. I mean, like I said, I mean, I have several mentors in our department, attendings here that I just there's no way I would be where I am today without them, because they've taken me under their wing and showed me, how to do, whether it's research or surgery, anything,
Hmm.
and I'm indebted to them forever, right? I mean, but you also have to be proactive about it, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Evan, thank you so much for sharing this with us.
Yeah, of
Your
course, no
experience,
problem.
the advice, the guidance. Your story was moving and honestly really touching. Like the Halloween costume, I can picture it in my head.
Yeah, it was amazing. Yeah, I don't know. I always think about that. It's funny because I'm not even going into pediatrics, but I just, for whatever reason, that that sticks out when you say like one of the most rewarding experiences. Yeah.
No, that was awesome. Okay, so with that, thank you so much for watching the Dr. Debrief podcast. I hope you enjoyed the stories, lessons, and perspectives shared today. To make sure you don't miss an episode, make sure you subscribe to the NDMD YouTube channel or whatever streaming service you choose to listen on. And please don't forget to comment and like while you're at it. See you next time.